Okay, so picture this. You're in a quiet, almost perfect suburban neighborhood in Portland. It's early morning.
That kind of gray, misty Pacific Northwest morning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything's still. And suddenly, the front door of this really nice craftsman house just bursts open. A man runs out. He's only wearing sweatpants, and he is just
And
screaming.
it's not a normal scream. The book describes it as this sound of just pure, raw agony.
And he doesn't hesitate. He just throws himself off his porch straight into the first patch of direct sunlight hitting the lawn.
Now, in almost any other vampire story you've ever read, this is, the moment of redemption. The tortured monster finally finds peace.
You expect him to turn to dust, maybe whisper a name?
Right. But that is absolutely not what happens here. The second that sunlight hits him, he doesn't just burn. He explodes.
Yeah, the text says it's like a gas main erupting. It's this violent, concussive blast that shatters the windows on his own house. And the reason he did it, it wasn't guilt. It wasn't some epic, tragic love story.
It was boredom.
Utter, soul-crushing boredom. He'd just run out of things to do.
And that single image, the exploding vampire on the manicured lawn, that's our way into Blood Memories by Barb Hendee. And it's our first clue that we're in for something different.
We are doing a deep dive today into a book that takes the urban fantasy genre, which, can get very focused on romance and action and clan politics.
Leather jackets and nightclubs.
Right. And it just pivots so hard into deep psychological horror. It asks this really terrifying question: what actually happens to a mind when you take away its ability to change forever?
The whole mission of this book, if you want to call it that, seems to be deconstructing those vampire tropes. Immortality isn't a gift here. It's a pathology. It's a disease of stagnation.
So yeah, this is Blood Memories. It's set right here in the Pacific Northwest, modern-day Portland and Seattle, but it feels ancient. It's gritty. It's visceral, and it really argues that immortality isn't a superpower. It's a cage.
And the monsters in this world, they're not really defined by their fangs. They're defined by being locked in a single state of being forever. So we have our main characters, Eleisha, who looks like a teenager, but she's centuries old.
She's our protagonist.
Then there's William, an elderly, senile vampire. And Edward, the man who just exploded on the lawn.
And the people hunting them aren't your typical Van Helsings with crosses and holy water. They're just damaged people, humans with their own psychic abilities that are, frankly, just as much of a curse as the vampirism they're hunting.
Which brings us to the book's magic system. It's one of the most unique things about it. There are no spells, no rituals. When you become undead, your single strongest personality trait gets amplified into a supernatural power or a gift.
A gift that can also be a weapon or a weakness.
Exactly. So the central conflict isn't just vampires versus humans. It's vampires versus these psychically gifted humans. And everyone was just burdened by their own nature.
Okay, let's really unpack that inciting incident then, the death of Edward, because everything spirals out from there.
It really does.
So our protagonist, Eleisha, she's come to Portland specifically to visit Edward. To her, he's the anchor. He's the one who's got it all together, the sanest vampire she knows.
He represents that classic archetype, right? The aristocratic, intelligent, controlled vampire. He plays chess, he loves fine arts, he's always well-dressed. He's the model of how to survive immortality with your mind intact.
Or so she thinks.
Or so she thinks. But the second she arrives at his house, that entire facade has just disintegrated. The book really wants you to experience the collapse of that archetype. It's not a physical rot at first, it's a mental one.
The sensory details here are they're incredible. She walks in, and Tchaikovsky's Francesca da Rimini is blasting so loud the walls are shaking.
And the choice of music there is so specific. That piece is literally a symphonic poem about the second circle of hell, where souls are trapped for eternity in this violent whirlwind, never able to rest.
It's a perfect metaphor for his mind state. He's trapped in a loop.
Completely. And then there's the smell.
Oh, the smell. It's this mix of a slaughterhouse and just garbage. Because he's been trying to cook.
Which sounds so mundane, but you have to remember, he's a vampire. He can't eat food. It would make him sick. He gets no nourishment from it.
But his kitchen is just piled with rotting groceries. There are legs of mutton he bought from Safeway just sitting out, spoiled milk. And get this, dead pets. A cat, a Doberman, just lying on the kitchen table among the food.
He's trying to pantomime being human, He's so detached from the feeling of humanity that he's just going through the motions, trying to remember what it was like. He tells Eleisha he's trying to recall the lost art of cooking.
But the result is just rot. It's decay. It's a performance of life that only creates death. It's this profound statement on what happens when you're stuck in the then, as the book says, and you can't grasp the now.
And he says this one line to her that it sums up the entire book's philosophy.
We don't really live forever, baby. We just cheat for a while.
And that's it. That's the core idea. Their existence isn't a continuous life. It's a static state, a pause button on the soul. And the penalty for that cheat is that you stop becoming. You just are.
Edward committed suicide because he'd run out of new experiences. He'd played every chess game, he'd read every book, he'd had every conversation. He lost the ability to be surprised by life.
And that was a fate worse than death for him. So when the police show up drawn by the noise and the complaints, he knows the game is over.
He doesn't even try to fight or run. He just kisses Eleisha on the forehead, says goodbye, and runs outside to meet the sun.
Which brings us back to the explosion. The lore here is so interesting. Vampires in this world are essentially psychic batteries.
Yeah.
They consume life force blood and store it.
They're pressurized containers of stolen time.
That's a great way to put it. So when the sunlight hits Edward, that containment field just breaks. The explosion isn't a chemical reaction, it's the psychic detonation of every single life he ever consumed.
The energy of 1,000 lives, the book says, all going off at once. It's a shockwave of memories, of emotions, of death itself. And this is the key. It's not a quiet death. It's a psychic scream that ripples out for miles.
And that scream is the breadcrumb that leads the hunters to the story. Because a normal person nearby would just see a fire, feel a gust of wind, maybe.
But there's a man standing on the lawn, a total stranger, just watching. His name is Wade Sheffield.
And when Edward explodes, this guy, Wade, just collapses. He drops to his knees, screaming, because he feels it. He feels the psychic death scream.
And that's our introduction to the antagonists, or I guess depending on your point of view, they might be the heroes.
It's very ambiguous.
Wade Sheffield and his partner, Dominic Vesendara, and they're not priests or members of some ancient order, they're just ex-cops.
But they're gifted, which goes back to that magic system we mentioned. Your strongest personality trait becomes your power.
So let's break down Wade. He's a police psychologist, which makes perfect sense because his gift is telepathy.
Right, and the book is so clear about this. It is not a fun superpower at all.
It's awful. It's described as a constant grinding noise in his head. He hears the petty thoughts, the secret hatreds, the boredom, the lies of everyone around him all the time. He calls it the chatter.
It makes him incredibly empathetic because he literally feels other people's pain, but it also completely isolates him. He can't have a normal relationship because he always knows what the other person is really thinking. It's a profound violation that he can't turn off.
And then you've got his partner, Dominic, ex-cop from New York. His gift is psychometry.
So he touches an object and gets flashes of its history. He touches a doorknob. He sees the people who used it. He touches a weapon.
He feels the violence.
He feels the violence. Imagine living in a world where every single object is just screaming its past at you. It would drive you mad.
And it has, in a way. Dominic is the one driving this hunt. He is obsessed with this one cold case from his time in New York. A young girl found murdered, wearing a white sweater.
And he touched that sweater.
He touched it. And he saw her killer, a vampire. He believes, or wants to believe, that it was Edward. That's why they're in Portland. He thinks he's finally found the monster from his past.
So you have this amazing dynamic. Wade, the telepath, hunts because his empathy forces him to feel the pain of the victims. Dominic, the psychometrist, hunts because his obsession demands revenge. One is driven by feeling too much for others, the other by a feeling locked inside himself.
But they're too late. They get to the house, and Edward is just a pile of ash on the lawn. But Edward made a very, very human mistake before he died.
He kept an address book.
Which is just, it's insane for a creature that's supposed to be living in the shadows. Why would you write down the locations of your entire secret network?
Loneliness. Goes back to that crushing loneliness. He couldn't visit them. Gathering attracts too much attention, but he could look at their names. He could feel like he had a family.
It's the artifact of his own despair. But for Wade and Dominic, it's a roadmap.
It's a kill list.
They break into Elisha's house in Portland after she's fled. Dominic picks up a hairbrush she left behind.
And the psychic residue, the sheer age and weight of memory on it, is so strong it gives him convulsions. It's like mainlining 200 years of history at once.
And in her room, they find airline tickets to Seattle. So the hunt is on.
Which means Eleisha is now a fugitive. She knows they're coming. She grabs the third member of their dysfunctional family, William, And they flee north to Seattle to hide with another vampire named Maggie.
We absolutely have to talk about William.
Oh, he's the most heartbreaking character in the entire book,
Yeah.
maybe in the entire genre. He's a vampire, he needs blood to survive, but he is senile.
Just let that sink in for a second. An immortal being with Alzheimer's disease.
He is locked in the mind of a confused 19th century nobleman. He thinks he's still the lord of his manor. He worries about being late for tea with his wife, who has been dead for 200 years. I mean, he doesn't understand why the sun hurts him. He is a predator who has no idea he's a predator.
He's completely helpless. He can't hunt for himself. He's a danger to himself. He would wander into traffic.
So Eleisha is his full-time caretaker. And the book asks this really grim question: how do you feed a senile vampire?
And the answer is just so sad. She raises rabbits. In the backyard of their safe house, she keeps a hutch full of rabbits, and she slaughters them and feeds their blood to William in a little porcelain teacup.
She tells him it's his medicine or a beef broth to keep his strength up.
It completely reframes the horror. Eleisha isn't some seductive creature of the night. She's a nurse. Her entire immortal existence is defined by caring for this man who doesn't even know her name most of the time.
It's her anchor to her own humanity. And then on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have Maggie.
Maggie, the vampire they're going to stay with in Seattle, and she is the total opposite of Eleisha.
If Eleisha is about duty and care, Maggie is about hedonism and denial. In life, Maggie was a seductress, a manipulator. So in death, her gift is this overwhelming supernatural charisma. Men are just drawn to her.
And she uses it. She lives in this huge, beautiful house on Queen Anne Hill. It's all satin sheets and expensive perfume and lace. She is adapted to her condition by leaning into it, by treating it like a business.
A very successful business.
Yeah.
But her presence immediately creates tension. Maggie hates William. She sees him as a weak link, a useless eater, a liability that could expose them all.
She only lets them stay because they share a maker. They're part of this family created by a vampire named Julian.
And let's be clear, this family dynamic is also incredibly tragic. They're not bound by love. They're bound by a shared trauma. They're all so lonely, but they can't gather together because a group of them is too dangerous, too noticeable. They're forced into these solitary lives.
Which brings us back to the address book. Edward's fatal mistake was a cry for connection.
Exactly. And it's what allows Eleisha to find Maggie, but it's also what's leading the hunters right to their door.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics of their survival, because the book gets really gritty with it. They're in Seattle, they need to feed, and Maggie decides it's time for Eleisha to, learn how to hunt properly.
And this scene at the dive bar, Blue Jacks, it just strips away any last shred of romance from the vampire myth. There's nothing sexy or alluring about this. It is clinical, it is predatory.
Maggie scans the bar and picks her target, a guy named Gunnar. And you see her criteria. He's alone. He looks like a drifter. He seems sad.
She targets the marginalized, the people who won't be missed. It's like managing an ecosystem, cold and efficient.
They lure him back to a motel room. Maggie feeds first. It's fast. It's brutal. No romance. No slow seduction. Just a bite and a drain. And then she makes Eleisha finish him off.
And this is where the title of the book, Blood Memories, becomes terrifyingly literal.
This is the core mechanic of the lore. When they drink the blood, they're not just getting physical sustenance. They're absorbing the victim's life force, which is essentially their memories, their emotions, their entire being.
So as Eleisha is draining the life from this stranger, Gunnar, she is suddenly living his life. She's inside his head.
She sees flashes of his childhood, an abusive father, a motorcycle he loved, a girl he lost. She experiences his entire biography in the split seconds that he's dying.
Can you imagine the psychological torture of that? You can't dehumanize your prey. The very act of killing them forces you to experience their humanity in the most intimate way possible.
You're literally filling yourself with the ghosts of everyone you murder.
And Eleisha is sickened by it. She hates it. She tries to block it out. But Maggie has learned to compartmentalize. She just treats the memories like static on a radio, just background noise she can tune out.
This is the big difference between them. Eleisha is still fighting to hold on to her empathy, mostly through her connection to William. Maggie has surrendered to being a predator.
And she tries to teach Eleisha to do the same. She shows her how to weaponize her own gift of helplessness, how to stumble in an alley to make a man rush to help her, how to look vulnerable to lure a predator into her own trap.
It's this perverse sort of coming-of-age story where the lesson is how to become a more efficient killer.
While all this is happening, Wade and Dominic have arrived in Seattle. And Wade's telepathy is going crazy. In the sea of constant chatter, he starts to pick up something new, something he describes as alien.
It's Eleisha.
It's Eleisha.
Yeah.
Because she's undead, her mind doesn't broadcast thoughts like a living human. It's a void, a patch of silence in the noise. And Wade, who has spent his entire life drowning in that noise, is just drawn to it. He's fascinated by the quiet.
And so the collision is inevitable. It happens in an alleyway. Classic urban fantasy setup. Eleisha and Maggie are out, and Wade and Dominic corner them.
But it goes wrong for everyone, immediately.
Mm.
Wade tries to get a psychic read on Eleisha, and because of their unique abilities, his projection and her reception, their minds just lock together.
A psychic feedback loop. He's overwhelmed with her ancient memories. She's paralyzed by his telepathic presence. It incapacitates both of them.
Which leaves the physical fight to the other two. Maggie, the supernaturally charismatic vampire, versus Dominic, the obsessed ex-cop.
And this is where the power dynamic just gets violently flipped on its head. We expect Maggie to be the monster, the physical threat. She's faster, she's stronger.
But Dominic isn't just a man, he's a zealot.
Yeah.
He is pure, focused intent.
And he's pragmatic. He knows from his research that bullets won't kill them for good. He carries a machete.
The book is so brutal here. He shoots Maggie to slow her down, tackles her, and without a moment's hesitation, he decapitates her.
And because of that psychic link between Wade and Eleisha, Eleisha feels it. She experiences Maggie's death. And we get that psychic explosion again, the death scream.
But this time it's not the scream of boredom. It's the release of the lives of thousands of men Maggie seduced and killed over the centuries. It's a psychic shockwave of lust and death that just floors everyone in the alley.
The brutality of Dominic is what really stands out here. He doesn't see a person. He doesn't see a woman. He just sees the thing that killed the girl in the white sweater. He's not a hunter. He's an exterminator.
And just like that, Maggie, who thought of herself as the apex predator of the city, is just butchered. It completely inverts the trope. In that moment, the human is the monster.
Eleisha only manages to escape because Wade is still reeling from the psychic blast. She scrambles away, leaving Maggie's body, and her only thought is to get back to William.
The whole dynamic has shifted. The strong sister is gone. The wise brother is gone. It's just her and the invalid now, and she knows Dominic will not stop.
So she realizes running is not an option anymore. She has to go on the offensive. She decides she has to kill the hunters.
Or at least one of them. She figures if she can kill Wade, the telepathic tracker, then Dominic will be blind.
And this sets up what I think is the emotional core of the entire book, the scene in Wade's hotel room.
The mind meld.
Yeah. She breaks into his room. She has a gun. She's fully prepared to execute him in his sleep.
But he wakes up. And he doesn't scream. He doesn't call for Dominic. He looks at her, and he recognizes her. Not her face, but her psychic signature. The silence.
He just invites her in. He says, "Come inside my head." It's such a vulnerable, strange thing to do.
Because he's desperate. He has spent his entire life hearing everyone, but never feeling heard himself.
Yeah.
And he realizes that this ancient creature, with her ability to absorb memories, might be the only person on Earth who could actually withstand the full force of his mind without breaking.
She is built to receive. He is built to transmit.
It's a perfect, terrifying symmetry. So she puts the gun down, and they connect. They deliberately initiate that psychic bond.
And we finally get the whole story. We see Wade's painful life, yeah. But then Eleisha opens up. She shows him her origin. We finally learn the truth about William.
And it recontextualizes everything you've read up to that point. We're thrown back to Cliff Bracken in Wales in the 1800s.
And we learn William was never a monster. He was a human lord, a kind man who loved his wife, his lands, and who developed dementia.
And his son, Julian, who had already been turned into a vampire years before, returns home to find his once proud father just fading away, losing his mind, losing his dignity.
And Julian is the real villain of this story.
Absolutely, because in this moment of what he thinks is love, but is actually profound arrogance and selfishness, he decides he's going to save his father from the indignity of aging. He turns him.
He thinks the vampire blood will be a cure, that it will regenerate his father's brain and bring back the man he remembered.
But it does the exact opposite. Vampirism in this world doesn't heal a broken mind. It preserves it. It freezes it in place. Forever.
He locks his father in a permanent, undying state of confusion and senility. It is a fate so much worse than a natural death. William is now trapped for eternity in the fog of his final days, but with a new, horrifying hunger that he can't possibly understand.
And when Julian sees what he's done, when he realizes his father is still lost but now also needs blood, he's disgusted. He can't stand to look at his own monstrous mistake.
So he needs a solution, a way to get rid of the problem.
And his solution is Eleisha. She was just a kitchen maid in the castle, a nobody. He drags her into a room, and he forces the change on her. He turns her against her will.
Not to be his companion, not out of love or desire.
But to be a nursemaid, an eternal caretaker for his father. He throws a bag of money at her and basically says, he's your problem now, and then he just abandons them both.
It's horrifying. Eleisha's entire existence is a punishment for someone else's crime. She has spent centuries of her life cleaning up Julian's mess, feeding William rabbits, hiding him, protecting him.
And when Wade sees this, when he experiences this history through their link, it changes everything for him. He feels the weight of her burden. He realizes Dominic's crusade is completely misguided. They're not hunting soulless killing machines.
He sees that Eleisha, this monster, has shown more humanity and devotion in her care for William than most actual humans show in their entire lives.
While they're having this deeply profound, world-altering moment of connection in the hotel room, Dominic is not sitting still.
No. Dominic is a man of action. He's not waiting for Wade. He's gone back to Maggie's house on Queen Anne Hill. He's finishing the job.
He breaks in, and he finds William.
And you have to picture William. He's just this confused old man in a burgundy smoking jacket. He probably thinks Dominic is a guest who's arrived for dinner. He is utterly, completely defenseless.
And Dominic kills him. He takes a shovel from the garden, or maybe the machete. Yeah, the book is a little unclear, but the result is the same. He destroys him.
And Eleisha feels it. Instantly, she's still linked with Wade, and the psychic death scream of William hits both of them at the same time.
But it's so different from the others. It's not the violent explosion of Edward's boredom or Maggie's conquests.
It's soft. The book describes it as these gentle, fragmented images. Green fields in Wales, a chessboard, pheasants, and over again the image of Eleisha's face.
Because that's all that was left in his mind. William didn't have 1,000 stolen lives inside him. He just had the broken pieces of his own life and the face of the one person who cared for him, his only anchor to reality.
Dominic didn't kill a monster. He euthanized a ghost.
And Wade feels this. He feels the gentle tragedy of William's end, and he just snaps. The understanding he's reached with Eleisha is cemented. He tells her to run, to hide, and he races back to the house to confront his partner.
That final scene at the house is it's the complete breakdown of their friendship, their entire mission. Dominic is standing over the ashes, triumphant. He thinks he's just saved Seattle. He calls William a filthy creature.
And Wade just screams at him, he fed on rabbits.
It's such an absurd, tragic line. It perfectly captures the disconnect between them.
And Dominic can't accept it. He can't allow for that kind of nuance. To him, they are all monsters. He says, they aren't people. They look at us as cattle.
And the awful irony is that he's not entirely wrong. Maggie did see humans as cattle. Julian certainly does. Dominic is right about the species, but he was dead wrong about the individual.
And he's become so fanatical he can't tell the difference anymore. So Wade does the unthinkable. He draws his gun on his best friend, on his partner.
He chooses the monster he now understands over the human he no longer recognizes.
He forces Dominic to leave, grabs the completely shattered Eleisha, and they run. They get in the car and they just drive.
And now they have to run from everyone. Dominic will never stop hunting them now, not after this betrayal. And there's an even bigger threat out there.
Julian.
The Maker. He would have felt his father's death scream no matter how faint.
That's a connection that transcends distance.
Yeah.
He will know his father is finally truly gone. And he is not the kind of creature to let that go unpunished.
So the book ends with Wade and Eleisha in a rental car, just driving into the darkness. Everyone else is dead. Edward, Maggie, William, they're all gone. It's
an incredibly bleak ending, really. They've both lost everything. Wade has lost his career, his friend, his entire life as a normal human. He's a fugitive. And Eleisha, she's lost her purpose. The one thing that defined her existence for centuries is gone.
But something has changed between them. The book makes a point of saying she stopped using her helpless gift on him. She's not projecting that fragility at him anymore.
No. They're partners now. Equals. They're bound together by these shared blood memories. He now carries her 200 years of trauma and duty, and she carries his lifetime of noise and loneliness. They know each other more intimately than any two people possibly could.
So when you look at the whole story, what is the final takeaway? It's a lot of tragedy and a very uncertain future.
I think at the end of the day, Blood Memories is a powerful rebuttal to our cultural obsession with immortality. We're always looking for ways to extend life, to cheat death. But this book argues that death is actually a vital component of what gives life meaning.
Because without an end, there's no urgency, no reason to change or grow.
Exactly. Without an end, there was only stagnation. Edward couldn't change. William was frozen. They weren't living. They were just existing. By cheating death, they cheated themselves out of life.
It brings us right back to that line from the beginning. We don't really live forever. We just cheat for a while.
And the price of that cheat is eventually yourself. You become a library of memories, but you forget how to be the librarian.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If you were given the offer, right now, to live forever, but the catch was you could never change. Your personality, your beliefs, your emotions would be locked exactly as they are in this moment for all time. Would you take that deal?
Or is the ability to grow, to evolve, and, yes, eventually to end, the only thing that actually makes us human?
Something to think about. That's all for this deep dive into blood memories.
Stay curious.
And we'll see you next time.